I'll ask you this. Is there going to be another alt season?
Of course. For that reason, I think no matter what, Bitcoin dominates in the future.
If the market pulls back in 2024, will Bitcoin still be able to push higher? What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Alpha series here on BitLab Academy. We're going to be diving in with an incredible guest. Happy to have him here, Mr. JoshuaJake. How are you doing? Thank you for being here in the Hit Network studios. What's going on in the market? Where the hell is price going? You got to drop that inside knowledge. So I'm going to hit you with some questions. First one, how you doing? How you feeling?
I'm doing great. Got off the plane coming to Atlanta just a few days back. Got on the plane at like $28,000 Bitcoin. Maybe it was at 30K, but by the time I was off, 35K, market's going wild, people going, where's this money coming from? Is this retailers? Is this institutions? Is this BlackRock's fault? Is this not BlackRock's fault? And it's just an exciting time to be in the markets for the first time in like 3 years. So I'm excited to be here.
I mean, I can echo that. A lot of people have come in this last, we had a huge amount of adoption over the last 2 years, and it kind of dwindled off. Engagement dwindled off. We see that as creators on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram where we get all those metrics. So Is there any sort of thought you have right now that you'd like to share with anybody, whether they're new in the market or they've been around for a long time? What's something that we need to consider with this new hype coming in? We got that God candle. Is there anything that we should be worried about? Is there any different sort of risk management we need to be doing? How do we not fall victim to these green candles and get ourselves in the wrong side of the position?
Yeah, great question. I would say, honestly, the first thing is realizing that we've been lied to nonstop from our financial institutions, our asset managers, just year after year after year. How many times has crypto been, had an obituary? It's been like 1,000 times at this point. There was actually just a recent article that showed CNBC and Bloomberg. So shout out to those analysts that have predicted the death of Bitcoin over I think 25 times and 35 for the other. So, moving into this new cycle, as we see hype come back and this life come back into these markets, it's the same vibes of early 2020 before we saw that rally into 2021. Don't chase the green candlesticks, right? Venture capitalists, asset managers, banks, they don't chase green candlesticks, right? They're buying and accumulating year after year when we're in a bear market. So if you're brand new to this industry, you just see a big green candlestick and you're like, man, I should buy before it goes up further. Just take a breath, sit back and just, let it find support. Just give it a moment and truly just understand what the asset you are buying actually is, how it functions, what the utility is before you make that investment decision.
I couldn't agree with that anymore. We talk about other people like Michael Saylor. He's become I don't want to call him the mascot or the spokesman of the Bitcoin space, but he is case in point, just taking it to the shoulder, taking it to the face, taking it to the back when he's just been DCAing nonstop. Some people call him dumb in some areas where he's buying near a top, but then you see he's also buying near a bottom. It's that time-tested strategy of buying because he sees value long-term. So how does one gain confidence when they're seeing the market swing about and to have that confidence to be a consistent buyer? But we were talking earlier, you mentioned that one of your main strategies, barring any other trading, your main strategy is DCA. So how does somebody, whether they're trading right now, they just got in, or they've been around for a long time, why should somebody DCA? Why do you use that as a strategy, and how can we implement that in all of our own portfolios to have more consistency and longevity in this market?
Yeah, so there's two main reasons. The first one is just time in the market always beats time in the market. I think that's a historical model. A lot of people that have tracked the S&P and just traditionally traded, they follow that metric, right? You don't want to be trying to time the bottom, time the top, just consistently average in. The second point of that is going to be just watch your local news media right now. Watch CNBC, watch Fox News, watch CNN. And not in the sense that you're going to take and absorb information from there, but realize that every economist in the world right now that has the PhDs, has the master's degrees, has 14 books, has a $100 million hedge fund or a $100 billion hedge fund, they're all fighting. They cannot compromise. They cannot come to agreement, right? Whether it's the war in the Middle East or it's the war in Ukraine or it's developments in the Pacific, people don't understand and can't figure out where we're heading in the future because we just printed $9 trillion in the last 3 years. So this is the first time I think you've seen a lot of economists not say, hey, take a pause back, let's focus on risk off assets or let's focus on risk on assets. It's more or less, man, when is the Fed's going to pivot? Are they going to pivot too quickly? Is this going to break the wage versus wealth gap in America? Are we screwed? As a 26-year-old, am I ever going to be able to buy a home again in my life, right? These are those questions that are starting to ramp up. So off that second topic, how do I position myself? I don't care necessarily what someone that's 70 or 80 plus years old is wondering about what's going on in the markets. You just brought up Michael Saylor. He's either going to be the next generation Warren Buffett because he makes the best trade in his life off Bitcoin, or he's going to fail miserably. Now, I like to lean towards the positive side of that because I am very bullish on Bitcoin, but that's my outlook. You know, when I see all these economists and these people that have been managing these hedge funds and asset management firms for 2, 3, 4 decades at now, you know, when they tell me that I'm wrong, that crypto is a bad investment, and I see the adoption on the back end, all I go is show them the chart of the wage versus prosperity gap in America. Go to 1971, what WTF, I won't say the word, but WTF happened in 1971.com, and you're going to look at the wage versus prosperity gap. Our politicians, our lobbyists, our economists, they've been wrong for 50 years. This inflation's not stopping, and it's not going to stop. So how I hedge myself is I follow something pretty similar to the 50-25-25 rule. What that rule is 50% of, you know, what this is my personal opinion, not FA. We know the rules here. Is ultimately going to be into those large caps, Bitcoin, ETH, some people like Matic, some people like XRP, whatever your blue chips are. Personally, that's Bitcoin and ETH. The next 25% is going to be your large caps, mid caps. You know, you want to diversify. And that last 25% is going to be the VC strategy, right? You need to think like a venture capitalist coming into this space. This is the jungle. This is Wall Street 2.0. This is no different than Silicon Valley. This is no different than the dot-com bubble. There's VCs coming in here like sharks, wrapping softwares and services in a product or a utility token, and then just pumping and dumping a same project that's a copy and paste of the previous. And so for that reason, I treat it like just VCs. I want to diversify and invest into quite a few, understanding that yes, 6 to 7 of them are going to go to zero, 3 to 4 of them are going to break even, and 1 is going to hit that moon bag.
So I'm going to pause you there just for a moment, just to clarify, 50% Bitcoin and Ethereum, or Bitcoin or Ethereum, another 25%, those other blue chips. We're talking, you know, something probably in the top 20, I would guess, right?
Yeah, top 20,
and then
top 30. Yeah.
The last 25%, you said VC, so it's a higher risk, the lower market cap most likely. Are you putting all of that 25% into one, or are you breaking up it into 5, 10, 15? I suppose that might be determined on how large the capital pool is that you're pulling from.
Definitely breaking up. Yeah, you know, the moment you're taking more than even 5% of your overall 100%, right? So if we have 100% of that portfolio, you know, you shouldn't be allocating 25% of that to meme coins, right? Things that have no utility or products that have no fundamental value at all, like Hex, right? Yes, I'm going to take a shot right there. You know, you want to spray and pray on that because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if necessarily these products have good utility or not. Look at Solana. It's broken down more than an ice cream machine from McDonald's. You've heard the memes, right? It's closed on Sundays like Chick-fil-A. So, you know, from that aspect, it's going to come to that marketing. And so you, like, again, no utility, but they're going to pump. So that's where you just want to diversify into, honestly, like 20, 30 cryptos. You know, we're talking about you're putting $100, $200 into a bunch of them, understanding, yes, it might go to zero, but also this might be the next Polygon Matic, or this might be the next Decentraland Mana, or whatever it is that we saw pump in 2021. So
you brought up a great point earlier, and I want to get your perspective on this. This is, I think, a very important consideration with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, in a lot of ways, drives the crypto ecosystem. So what happens with this narrative, I have to ask you, with risk on, risk off. Currently, it's still considered a risk off sort of asset in terms of you're going to typically want to look to Bitcoin when risk comes back in the market, right? So because it's high risk. So is it risk on? Is it risk off? This debate about Bitcoin still being whether or not it's digital gold, it's going to, you know, be an inflation hedge. I think in the long term it will. But I have to ask, what's your perspective on when Bitcoin may flip out of that risk narrative, where it's truly a commodity, where it truly not only trades in its own sort of sector, but also counter to, for instance, right now we see the markets maybe on the cusp of breaking down, especially after the Fed pivots. Is Bitcoin ready to have a true and like a sustained and continual breaking of correlation with traditional assets? When do you see Bitcoin breaking that correlation and becoming something other than a risk asset, a true store of value?
It's this cycle. You know, you get a lot of talks of de-dollarization. There's lots of talks of BRICS, China, Russia, Brazil, India, South America, all coming together and, you know, building a system that's an alternative to our current currency in the United States. Now, for that reason, that's because of all the money printing we've been printing the last few years. And inevitably, we've been indebting third world countries, second world countries with World Bank loans. And what happens when the United States raises their interest rates and force us to not only print more money ourselves to pay back our own interest rates, because next year we're going to be paying back $1.25 trillion annually just in debts that we owe based off our own interest. It's ridiculous. But people don't realize the impact that has on third world countries and second world countries. These countries are indebted to the United States. They have US debts, US treasuries, right? So when they're holding on to these assets, it's going to force them to print more of their own money just to pay back off the US loans that they owe, right? So, it causes hyperinflation. It destabilizes a lot of countries. And for this reason, you're seeing a lot of second world countries, third world countries now come into play and starting to do things like in the Middle East, you had, I believe it's pronounced Oman. I could be pronouncing that Middle Eastern country wrong, but this is right on the border of Saudi Arabia. This is in that oil basin area. They're investing $1.1 billion into converting wasted natural gas and methane emissions into a net value with Bitcoin miners. What do I mean by that? Well, this is where the world's greatest commodity comes into play. You see, most of the energy that's created in our world through our fossil fuels. So let's get this out. Greta Thunberg was wrong. Okay. We need nuclear. We do need to go towards renewables, but we rely on fossil fuels. That's not going to go away. And the infrastructure that's been built out in the United States and globally, it would take us years, if not decades, to replace the equipment and infrastructure to support new energy. So with that understanding, we have all of this energy being created, and you have, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, but oil fields where they're just flaring gas emissions and burning off all these oil emissions into our atmosphere.
Pure waste.
Pure waste.
Why not harness it?
Exactly. And so we're now seeing companies like Crusoe Energy, Clean Spark, and a lot of companies come together through Exxon, ConocoPhillips, even Gazprom, which is going to be one of the largest oil providers in the world out of Russia. They're all converting a lot of that wasted energy into a net value with Bitcoin, and that can be done anywhere. So for that reason, I think this next cycle, this is the time where we have the spot ETFs. We watched BlackRock, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, everybody manipulate our markets for the last 5 years. They're calling it a money laundering index. They're saying it's a scam. They're saying it's going to go to zero. Meanwhile, the whole time they're investing on the back end and getting ready to develop what I believe is going to be the next biggest financial product ever, which is a Bitcoin spot ETF. So
much like juicy nuggets there. And all of you watching right now, if you haven't yet, head over to Discover Crypto. DZ put out a great video breaking down the history chronologically of all the different things Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, has said over the years, from it being an index for money laundering it to it basically having no value, all the way now to saying this is going to be the asset that is going to spark this flight to quality. It's going to be the asset that transcends all global currencies, and it's the best asset in the world, essentially. We're going to see this cascade into not only Larry Fink and BlackRock talking about this, but they are the largest asset manager on earth. It's going to trickle down into all the family offices, all those financial services, your mom and pop, your neighbor, your aunt and uncle, Uncle Linda, Aunt Larry. We don't know what's going on these days, but we want to make sure that you stay ahead of the curve. That's why we're here on Discover Crypto. So I want to continue this. And, we have a huge shift happening right now. Huge shift. Not only is the largest asset manager on earth signaling positively around Bitcoin, and of course, this is going to trickle into the entire digital ecosystem. But the question I have, and I'm sure a lot of you out there have, is this time different? Going into 2024, we have a halving coming up in April. How do we plan for this? Because we've had altcoin seasons in the past. We've had different narratives, and there's a lot to unpack here. So is this time different? Why and how? Do we look for an alt season? Do we look for a specific narrative, or is it Bitcoin full go? What are we expecting?
Yeah, I'm going to make a lot of traders mad right now and economists and say that yes, this time in fact is very different, which you're not supposed to say often at all in any market. The reason why is Bitcoin was birthed out of the Great Recession. It was created in 2009. That is when Satoshi released our white paper. It's only known a low-based interest rate in economy. It's never seen high interest rates before. It's never seen the vast amount of money printing that has actually taken place over the last few years. So in that aspect, with all the macro tensions, I think our politicians have failed us. I think our economists have failed us. I think the banks have failed us. And we all see this. We see the debt. We're at $33 trillion in debt as a nation. We need to pass something that says, hey, Congress, if you can't fix this deficit, you're out of you're out of your policies. But the problem is ever since Trump took over in 2016, it's a reality TV show up there. It's whoever the loudest and speaks the loudest that's going to get the most votes, right? You had one of the House speakers right now trying to run. He had never even passed a bill in his life, but he's just really good on TV. And so that's really changed and altered a lot of the ways we look at our regulations and the people that represent us in our economy, right? So, the outlook here, Man, I started ranting. I forgot the question.
So everybody out there, by the way, if you agree with what if you're frustrated with whatever your government's doing, if you think that things are not going exactly as they should be, smash the like button, subscribe, join us here in Discover Crypto, having these discussions. The question was, Bitcoin, ETFs, is this time different? Institutions right here on the horizon, is this going to change things? Is there going to be an alt season still? Do we need to focus only on Bitcoin? What do we do? How do we plan for this if it is different?
Yeah, so I really truly think it's up to not only the next generation, but the Web3 industry as a whole. AI, all these advancements, we're moving towards a pace of deglobalization. We're starting to see a lot more regionalism take place. We're trying to not be as reliant on China's economy as they are as reliant on us, right? We're trying to move to Canada, Mexico, et cetera. So for these reasons, there's going to be a ton of technological advancements in the future, and I believe blockchain is going to be a huge focus on that. And specifically that's why I think this time is different. We're at a moment in history where this isn't like, something that's going to be a casual talk about in your sophomore class of high school in the future. This is going to be an entire semester on, what happened in 2021. Why did we see a de-dollarization? Where did that money funnel over? You have BRICS, new development banks, all these things taking place. And for that perspective, what I'm going to do with altcoins and Bitcoin is I understand that cryptography specifically, AI, these advancements, this technology is what's going to allow us to survive in the future. A lot of people don't realize this, but crypto accesses a global market. And that can benefit the US dollar in many ways. Everybody out there right now is scared of a central bank digital currency. They're scared of giving their digital identity and their data to their government. I think they have every right to be. The problem is you should have been scared 20 years ago. We've been in lawsuits, these big data companies, all the big tech companies, they have that information. When you scan your palm at, World Market now, don't know if you've seen that yet, where you just scan your palm and that pays for your bills now. You don't even need a credit card. That technology has existed for 10, 15 years. So imagine what they have in their arsenal now that we won't see for another 10 to 15 years. So something to watch out here for is understand that this is the future. The reason why we know that, why is the Federal Reserve trying to fight over who gets to issue stablecoins? They're looking at the stablecoins as a form of private currency, private money. They access that. All of a sudden, guess who gets to regulate all the AML, the KYC, and any on-ramp and off-ramp that comes in the crypto? Every single off-ramp and on-ramp is going to require stablecoins that are 100% backed by our US dollar. So from that outlook, what does this mean? Is this time different? Yes, crypto is not only a solution to fractional banking, it's a cure. And these asset managers, these banks, the Federal Reserve, they understand that. And so the outlook here is, what am I going to do with altcoins? I'm going to see what really changes the system in the future.
It's a lot of great things to unpack there. We could talk another 2 hours about that alone, but I want to dig in a little deeper right there. Because we have people that are very, very in tune with all this global macro, and then we have other people, and increasingly every cycle we get a disproportionate number of new adopters that come into the space, and many of them have never traded before or invested before. Yeah. So it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. It's a great way at minimum to get people into thinking about their future. And that's one of the things that I think that's so great about blockchain and digital assets and Bitcoin and all these different. But how do we balance this? How does the layman, the everyman, the person that is only putting $1,000 in, if they're trying to, jump in and catch up to JoshuaJake or catch up to DZ or catch up to Frankie Candles or CryptoFace, how does one look at this next market cycle and go, well, man, the last two market cycles, we've had the halving, we've had a huge pump that's happened afterwards, and some sort of, exponential high, whether it's a blow off top or the double top like we had back into this last bull cycle. But then we also had these massive gains from altcoins. How do we communicate or have discourse around looking into this next cycle? If it's different, how do we manage that? How do we not get ourselves locked in a trap of trying to buy the next 100x coin and losing our life savings because we didn't do the 50-25-25 rule? So what do we do looking forward? If this time's different, how do we plan for it? How do we truly navigate this market?
Yeah, you got to do the one thing our educational system will teach you, and that is financial literacy. So start picking up books and reading about how our economy actually works and what has failed in the past. You don't need to compare yourself to someone that, for example, me or an economist or a Warren Buffett, right? If you're behind, and that's okay. You just got to pick up a book and start reading. And so whether it's following that 50-25-25 rule, whether it's, now starting to allocate yourself, we need to diversify. again, going back to the economist outlook on nobody understands where we're heading in this future, that means diversifying the precious metals. That means diversifying into crypto. Shoot, that means maxing out your IRA Roth, depending on your age. Maybe it's just your Roth. You know, it just really depends on where you're at. And I would say a great book for that is the one behind us right here, The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. It doesn't matter if you're 18, 22, 34 with 3 kids, or 50 and in $100,000 in debt. That is a book where you'll be able to see, you know, what is the best outlook for you and your life at the moment. But again, not something to be scared of. You just got to be aware of it and just be able to adapt to that as we deal with the uncertainty that is the future.
So everybody, I want you to know right now, I know it doesn't sound sexy to educate yourself, but if you don't have the diligence, then you don't deserve the success. And I'm not calling you out. I'm calling myself out. I'm calling Josh out. I'm calling out everybody at Hit Network. I'm calling out everybody that's watching, because it's true for all of us at one time or another. And if you look back at your life, anytime you truly succeeded at something, it's when you stopped looking at the wants and you started focusing on the needs. And sometimes the need is not the surface level thing you're considering. The need is the time spent doing something. The need is to cut out the noise of your life and truly dive into that thing. If you want it, then you don't deserve it unless you actually cut it down and focus on those things. So, I mean, join us here in BitLab Academy. We're not the only ones out here, but there's plenty out there. Do the diligence. Join us on YouTube, on BitLab Academy's live stream, on Discover Crypto, on JoshuaJake, on his TikTok. We're going to bring up his socials here in a minute. But the point is, you got to do the diligence and be patient, you know, overall. But looking in, I'll ask you this. Is there going to be another alt season?
Of course, yeah. So the most of your trading pairs are in Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin, you know, starts to dominate the markets, you're going to have a trickle down effect into a lot of your altcoins. It just floods over into the industry, especially for long-term holders, right? There was an amazing metric that just came out, and it shows that long-term holders are, even though they're in profit by upwards of 20% now, they're still holding. And I believe that is because of the sentiment in the market. I think people that have been in this industry, been holding for 3-4 years, they understand there's a lot of cracks really in the dam. There's a lot of cracks, or we're waiting for something to break that truly breaks this market. You know, and even actually a little bit off that, it's kind of like the whole topic of pivoting interest rates from Jerome Powell. It really depends on what that man does. I wish it was a clear path and say you just have to hold Bitcoin and you're going to be fine. But if he pivots too early, all of a sudden that wage versus wealth gap in America just widens. 1% becomes the 0.01% and it becomes the 99.9%. And it keeps moving further and further. And so you want him to keep interest rates at a longer period of time. If they're out there for a longer period of time, that could mean commodities and things like Bitcoin are going to structurally trade and, you know, move in a positive value. It really just depends on that outlook over the next year. And that's why you have to kind of just be able to navigate both ends, whether we're in a high interest rate based market or we are starting to pivot. So the question of, will there be another altcoin season? Of course, there's always going to be. Right around the corner is quantum. Quantum mechanics is going to bring in a whole new plethora of technology that will more than likely be a part of cryptography. So, you know, what you want to look out for here is there's always going to be altcoins. Bitcoin might be truly that world's greatest digital commodity, and everything else, in my opinion, might look like a software as a service. There's always going to be a new software as a service. There's always going to be a new trade. There's going to be always new opportunities. So altcoin seasons, I still think are going to be cyclical. I think you're still going to see them every few years. Whether or not we move into a decadal commodities run, you're still going to see altcoin seasons come out.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. And I think everybody out there speculating likes that too. And, you know, we just talked about this time is different. So I do think we need to watch for things not lining up exactly as they have in the past. However, you got to stay true to looking at the data and the charts and not be so focused on the price and following trends. One of the things I appreciate about you is you're very big on trends, whether it's figuring out how to do certain content on TikTok, looking at trends, or also investment strategies. You know, we talk about alt seasons, but there's also going to be trends within the altcoin market itself. We've had a original altcoin ICO, boom cycle in 2017. Then we had the DeFi summer. Then we had the NFTs. Then we had gaming. Then we had a very brief AI respite. It was kind of a season, but not quite. Is it going to be? I don't think those are going to line up the same way. How do you see the niches or the potential niche? Anything on your radar going in this next cycle that we need to keep, that you're keeping an eye on, that we should be watching for?
Yeah, definitely. I would honestly say the biggest one, in my opinion, is going to probably be Bitcoin layer 2s, which not a lot of people know about. Now, not every product's going to be good. That's a layer 2 that's built on top of that. But the one thing you want to follow in this industry is the money. So if you're getting a spot Bitcoin ETF, and we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into that ecosystem,
or trillions.
Or trillions.
On the horizon.
trillions on the horizon for the bullish opium, which I love to smoke. You know, it's good. It's good to have.
It's going to be a slow burn.
You know, so I would have that outlook. Is like, okay, pay attention to the layer 2s and the layer 1s that are built on top of that scaling Bitcoin's network, right? People are going to want to access that liquidity. The other big one is the one that no matter how much of a wealth gap is created in our society, there's one thing every billionaire agrees on in this world, and that's that they want to not necessarily live longer, but they want to live older and healthier. So, you know, be 90, but feel like you're 30. That is longevity. So in that type of research, that would be the decentralized science field. There's a ton of breakthroughs. It's a big FU to the big pharmaceutical companies. It's taking back control of our data, and it's putting all of the amazing scientific advancements on chain and wrapping that in tokens so that way they have IP rights to scientists. But that's a really cool industry.
So are there 2 or 3 in that field currently that you're looking at? And this is not financial advice, but I'm just curious, like 2 or 3 that you feel like currently are dominating. Again, everything's cyclical. So in 2 weeks time, there might be a different grouping, but just to get people their eyes in the right direction of the market.
Yeah, so I still think that industry is about 2 to 3 years out. It's probably the smallest emerging market in crypto. Okay, it's less than maybe $30 million in market cap.
So these are going to be super micro.
That's what I'm saying. So yeah, we're not. The only one I'll bring up is going to be Vitadao. That's because it's backed by the Ethereum Foundation and Vitalik Buterin. So that's a great way to kind of just start researching and understanding what's taking place in that sector. Of course, there's like 20 to 30 cryptos, but even though they are under that $1 million or $5 million market cap, what I do want to point out is this isn't your anonymous 17-year-old on Twitter that lives in his mother's basement starting a DAO for his first time saying he's going to build the next Apple, right? These are scientists with PhDs, Nobel Prizes, master that are like real doctors that have been, you know, doing scientific discoveries and have created some amazing things for the last 15 years with Harvard, UCLA, whatever it is. And, you know, they're coming together with DAOs. And when you say a DAO, a lot of people get turned off pretty quickly because DAOs, unfortunately, have had a lot of issues in the past. But now we're seeing universities, scientific laboratories, and all these companies come together and use DAOs to that advantage. So there's a lot more merit to the industry. And I think it's kind of just, it's marinating and it's keeping the wrong people out. And that's a good reason. What I mean by that is it is a little bit steep to learn and understand that industry. I want to say a phrase right here, on-demand correlation data sets, right? What the heck is that? Exactly. Most of your influencers aren't going to even want to give the time or day to look into that. And that's exactly why I think you guys should start researching that, because that's going to be huge in 2 to 3 years. Staying
ahead of the curve is the name of the game. That's the edge in this market. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to bring up, yes, we talk about digital assets, but I know I've seen a lot of stuff you've talked about. You've seen some of the things I talk about. I don't focus only on Bitcoin. My investments are almost entirely in the digital asset space. However, in order to understand how to find an edge in these markets, I look very broad. I look at the Dixie. I look at what's going on with, you know, the excess savings rates in the US, you know, what's going on with credit, all these different metrics, the 10-year treasury, all the boring stuff. I look at that and try to bring it to people in a digestible way, but all the stuff I'm seeing suggests that, and this is, I feel like this has been a 10-year statement, but it looks like the markets are setting up for a very likely, almost guaranteed recession that's going to come sometime potentially in 2024. Maybe. If it does happen, if we get the markets truly starting to pull back, truly collapsing, maybe after the pivot, who knows when, do you think Bitcoin is at a place right now that it can withstand those economic headwinds and not go into a recession or not go into a basically truncated bull market and crash into 2024 rather than have that bull market push that we all want to see after the halving? Because this is a weird storm we have with the economy as it is, but we have ETFs on the horizon and the halving and the presidential election cycle year 2024. This is like a mix mash of all the best data, all the best scenarios with also a huge potential for an economic crisis. What gives? What do we do?
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of speculation that goes into what I'm about to say, and it depends on a million different things that are about to take place in this next year, right? We got presidential elections, high interest rate economy. China's like real estate market's about to collapse. They have all BRICS, Belt and Road initiatives, wars, lots happening. So, you know, the outlook here is I would like to relate back to Silicon Valley Bank. When it collapsed, of course, Bitcoin did drop in the near term, but that 24 hours, but ended up pumping. So if we have a collapse of that magnitude, what I would pay attention to is all the lenders that are lending massively for Bitcoin, whether that's Genesis or any companies that are just offering ridiculous amounts of lending protocols. That lending aspect in the industry, if any of those collapse, of course, that's going to be a negative impact on Bitcoin in the near term. But the reality is what option do you have? If the dollar collapses, every other economy on the planet is collapsing. It's not like it's just one or everybody. It's, you know, we don't just casually transition to another world reserve currency. That's not how these macro works. So, when you're looking at that economic game of risks, and this is called game theory, you have to say, okay, well, what happens? Who would replace us? And the answer is that, okay, is BRICS the next option? Is China the next option? Because a lot of people truly believe that, right? But if you're going to have China behind this, we can't audit them. We have no idea how actually their reserves even work. We can't, we have no idea how bad the real estate market is. It's ran by a totalitarian, authoritarian-like figure that has completely shifted from direct communism and is now just pivoting completely towards, a country controlled by the government and no private state. Private money in China is on a decline. So if this is the case, who's going to be that replacement to that dollar? And that exact question is, what everybody's trying to solve. And in my opinion, the dollar's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. You have a lot of different macro playing fields right now that need to play out. There's a lot of speculation going on, whether it is the Indo-Pacific, and we see tensions rise with Taiwan. People don't even look at the CHIPS Plan 4 Act that Biden put onto China's economy that's chokeholding the semiconductor production. They're now putting graphite, pretty much tariffs, and banning the production of that will affect us in the United States. Because guess, we ban semiconductors, they ban graphites, which create the batteries that need semiconductors. So it's this game of risk and this game of war, a tug of war back and forth. And because of that, guess what's decentralized, not controlled by a single entity, and is a scapegoat for every single country out there?
Shiba Inu.
It's going to be Bitcoin. So yeah, exactly. So for that reason, I think no matter what, Bitcoin dominates in the future. And that outlook is, again, why Bitcoin is the greatest commodity in the world. That isn't another altcoin. That isn't another stock. That's not another currency. That's Bitcoin. And nothing can replace that.
So if the market pulls back in this perfect storm for bullishness in Bitcoin, if the market pulls back in 2024, will Bitcoin still be able to push higher? That's the question.
I think it will. Because if we're asking ourselves if the market's pushing back, more than likely something broke and we're printing money again. And so as soon as that money printer turns back on, everybody's going to be looking for that scapegoat and that safe haven against, again, or as Larry Fink said, flight to quality. Because at that point, this is no longer $9 trillion printing. With more money, that means we have more interest rates, which means we have more debt. So it's just more and more and more money printing. And the only way out of that is either, again, have access to global liquidity through stable coins with crypto, or that means we make other countries more reliant on the US dollar once again, which I believe both of those will unravel over the next 10 years.
Everything our government is doing or can do from here on out is only strengthening the case for Bitcoin. And I could not be more excited about where this market's going. Joshua, it's been great talking with you. Where can everybody find you? Give us your socials. And when are you going to come back?
Yeah, so it's JoshuaJake on all socials. I do a lot right now. I just actually sold my personal marketing company. But right now you can find me on TikTok, Twitter, and then of course YouTube. But YouTube, I'm actually transitioning, guys. It actually looks like I'll be here about every other week on Discover Crypto, hosting your guys' morning show and doing a lot more interviews and content like this with you guys here in Georgia. So stay tuned for some crazy announcements coming out of that. You can also find me on CRU Plus, which is going to be Cryptos R Us, George's new program. I'm hosting a show called Beyond the Headlines, where I go in depth on your macroeconomics. I bag on certain presidential candidates, and I just talk about the real things that need to be talked about in these markets that do affect crypto. So.
Well, right on. We appreciate you being here, talking and going surface level and going super deep. I hope you all enjoyed that. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ding the bell, join us here in our community. Positive encouragement, data-driven, trying to bring you the best, the peak and information here in the crypto markets and looking at those broader markets too. I hope you all have a wonderful Saturday. Thank you for being here with us. That's all I got. Adios, muchachos.
Thanks, guys.